Last time on Essentials. So we're, I think, somewhat coming to somewhat of a conclusion, perhaps, or maybe a beginning. And that is, once again, just to get this straight out, and then we're going to jump into a Mishnah I wanted to share with you, which we started to discuss, and that is the following, in no particular order. We got kosher, we got Shabbos, and we have relationships. We're ending it, right? Maybe. Right? Relationships. Now, why am I still on this for a little bit is because of the fact that people didn't get it yet. Yeah? So, what we're saying is, assuming there is no God, there is no Torah, it never existed, it never was, it never will be. So then, kosher doesn't matter. You can eat whatever you want. Shabbos doesn't matter. You could take whatever time you want and not time. Keep it, don't keep it. In relationships, also, you're welcome to do whatever you want with them, sleep with whom you want, whenever you want. I think we can somewhat, some others have a hard time understanding this or agreeing with it, but I think that most of us can agree with the fact that at least the relationships one is something which wouldn't be a good idea, nothing to do, not with God, but having to do just with the idea of being a human being, the way I understand it. And if you disagree, that's up to you, and good luck with that. But meaning to say that most of us, if we are in a committed relationship, although we might be tempted to be adulterous, wouldn't want to do it in order to not risk the loss that you will incur for doing such a thing. Okay, this is that's if there is no God and you are certain. What if there is a God? So now, just to sum it up, for those who are just coming now, the question is, we're asking, is it worth it to keep the Torah and keep the mitzvos, even if you're not sure if it's true? Even if you're not sure. If you are certain that it's not true, so then yeah, do whatever you want, right? And there's not really a loss. Maybe some of the things are worth it to keep anyway, but for the most part, probably not. What if you are not certain, you are unsure? Is it worth it to follow it anyway? And the answer I would like to suggest is it is worth it to follow it anyway, even if you're not sure. Even if it maybe there's nothing. But there might be there's something. And if there's something, so then, if you're wrong, therefore it's worth it. Now, there are those that would say, well, okay, then why Judaism? Why not another religion? And that we'd have to get to in a moment. I'll explain that perhaps. But before we get into explaining that, at least understand that it's worth it to keep a religion. Let's say there would just be one of them. It's worth it to keep it, but maybe that's right. Because what happens if it's true? If it actually is true. So, if you lived your life and you followed the mitzvot, you followed the Torah, and it turns out to be true, so what ends up happening? Not only did you gain in this world, and what I mean by that is that to every negative that we're losing out, what I mean by that is if you're a religious Jew, so then you can't eat whatever food you want, you have to keep certain holidays where there are things you have to stop and can't do things, and within relationships there are boundaries. So what happens if you keep them? What do you end up losing? Do you end up losing? Yes, you end up losing. You can't eat bacon. You can't eat pig. You can't eat pig with bacon, which I think is the same thing. But the bottom line is, right, you lose at that. And you can't work on certain days. You might lose business deals or whatever. And you have to be in one committed relationship. Okay, let's say that would be the case. Is that a loss? Yes, but it's also a gain. It's also a gain. You learn self-control from this. But okay, but it's more of a loss. Fine, it's more of a loss, but you also gained. In other words, it's not as much of a loss that you didn't gain anything. You get it? If it would be that you lost completely and gained nothing, not gained, but gained nothing, I hear it. But you're gaining something. Self-control, a time to actually think, and a deep relationship where you actually cut something out of it. That's what you lose. What do you gain if it's true? You gain olam haba. You gain unbelievable heaven. Not only did you gain in this world self-control, did you gain a time to think and a deep relationship, but you also get rewarded for it to the nth degree, which you can't describe. So that's what it comes down to. It's a based off what we call Pascal's wager, that it's worth it even if it isn't true on the account that maybe it is true. Does everybody get that point? Mm-hmm. So now, anyone in this room, if you are Jewish, if you're not Jewish, that's another story. If you are Jewish, it would be silly for you not to be following it. Does that make sense? Okay, good. So good luck with that, everyone. Thank you all for coming. Okay, so now is where we get into what I discussed yesterday at the very end, with what we call the cost-benefit analysis. The cost-benefit analysis, and this is what which we started to describe, and we went on both angles of it. And we go like this. Welcome, please. So we got the following. Every one of us in our life are constantly making decisions. And we're constantly evaluating what's the cost. It's what is it going to cost me to do this? What am I going to gain by doing this? Right? Does everybody see that? Everything you do in your life, you are doing a cost-benefit analysis. Now, what is the biggest problem that I find? And I mentioned it in passing yesterday. Most of us don't know what the real cost of something is, nor do we understand the real benefit. Right? Has anyone here ever said, let's say, I can't think of an example, so I'm going to move on. Next. Now, understand, but let me try to think of something that anyone ever said. It's worth it for me to eat this food late at night. It's late at night, you get home, and you're not really so hungry, but there's a cake there. It was your birthday, and it's still left over a bunch of ice cream cake, and you get tempted to eat it. Has anyone ever eaten it before? No. Yeah? The next morning, did anyone ever feel a little bit ill?
I felt fat.
What?
I felt fat.
Who felt fat?
Me.
You felt fat when you had it. I hear that. Good luck with that. There's always the elliptical. Okay, so the bottom line is what? How do we feel? We feel fat, we feel bloated. We don't feel good, yeah? Now, it depends how much you have of it. I mean, you have. You know what I mean? You ever have a thing where someone goes and they have like cake, you're like, can I just get a little sliver? I just want like a little sliver. So they cut a sliver, and when they cut the sliver, you take the rest of it. You're like, thank you, right? And you go and you eat it. Eventually, you might as well do that because that's what you're going to do. You're going to keep having slivers till you finish the whole thing, yeah? We go ahead and we made a cost-benefit analysis. What is it going to cost me to eat this cake? I'm going to feel sick in the morning. What am I going to gain for eating this cake? I'm going to gain immediate pleasure right now. Which one is more worth it? The answer is no. Doesn't depend. I'm giving you a case, and we're going to work it backwards. The case was, you ate it. The next morning, you felt sick. That's the case. Now let's rewind. You're about to do it. Cost benefit. It's going to cost you. You'll feel sick in the morning. You're going to gain the pleasure for this moment. Which one wins? I don't want to know in reality in terms of which one should win.
The pleasure.
Of?
The moment.
Come on, people.
You might die in the middle of the night.
You might die in the middle of the night, therefore eat everything. Yeah? Which one wins?
I would say the pain doesn't cancel out the pleasure.
Oh, it doesn't cancel the pleasure, for sure. The pain does not cancel out the pleasure. The question wasn't, does it cancel it out? It was there.
Pleasure wins.
The question wasn't, does the pain cancel the pleasure? The question is, at the end of the day, when you go ahead and you look back on it, and you now were to be asked at the moment in the morning, should you have eaten the cake? What would a person say? The answer is, now it depends. There are times when I've had, personally, because I diet, and we discussed this. I don't look like this for nothing, okay? It's because I haven't been dying in a while. But the point is what? Is that a lot of times I will be on a diet, but I will give in to my temptation, and I will eat a sweet, okay? Or two, or three. Or I'll leave over one or two and eat the rest, yeah? But the point is I'll eat it. Afterwards, what do I feel like? It depends. Sometimes I feel like, oh, that was so not worth it. I have a stomach ache. It's just, I just don't feel good. It wasn't worth it. Other times I'll say, gosh, I have a stomach ache, but it was worth it. That was worth the stomach ache, right? We have certain things that we say. Is that right? For the most part, though, I will tell you personally, and everyone in your own life, you're welcome to, this is your own personal feeling on this. For the most part, me, when I wake up, I say, why did I do that? I shouldn't have done it. Has anyone ever done that before? For those people who say, I shouldn't have done it, then why did you do it?
Lack of self-control.
More?
You didn't think of the long term.
You didn't fully appreciate what the cost was. Did everybody get that? When you made your cost-benefit analysis, what you said was, I'm going to gain pleasure, I'm going to lose, okay, I won't feel so good. But the next morning it wasn't, I didn't feel so good, it was like, I feel terrible. And if you would have put it to the equation at the moment before you ate it, how you really would have felt, what the cost really would have been, then you never would have done it. Does this make sense? Yeah. And that's what I mean to say that most of us don't live our lives according to real cost-benefit analysis. This person goes, okay, so I won't follow the Torah, so I'll get hell. Fine, I'll go to hell. What's the big deal anyway? What? What's the big deal anyway? I saw this kid. There's a kid who put on YouTube. You can find it if you want. I mean, it's a video on YouTube, right? It shouldn't be hard to find. It's only about 1 billion of them. Making $1 trillion now. This one kid gets up and he says the following. I was asked to come to this community to speak to rebuttal this kid, and I didn't go, mainly because I just didn't do it. But the second reason, which I use as an excuse, is because it would have been pointless, and that is true, but it wasn't an excuse, but it's true. Why? Because he was a kid, and I don't mean age wasn't necessarily the issue, but the maturity level was, and he wasn't really thinking. One of the things he says is like this: there can't be a God. Because what about the Holocaust, right? This is a big question people like to ask. What about the Holocaust? My response is, what about it? It was bad. Okay, it's terrible. I don't know what to answer. Why you would have done it, but it doesn't take away the fact that there is a God. It's just, oh no, that's bad. I don't know how to reconcile it. I don't have an answer. But it doesn't uproot and negate the whole concept. But people go on to use that as their excuse to get it. I mean, as a... Okay, so people go ahead, and then what happens? And they feel better about themselves that they don't have to follow it anymore because of now I don't have to follow it because it's not true. How do I know it's not true? Because a bad thing happened. This is like Christopher Hitchens when he speaks of anyone who watched him before, and he deeply bothers me when I watch him because he's, if you know what I'm talking about, he's a debater. Now he's dead, but he used to debate a lot, mainly Christianity, which I don't know why he wasted his time with that. But the idea is, what if you want to debate? Let's debate Judaism. The idea is what ended up happening. He goes ahead, and Christopher Hitchens goes, "I'm ready," and he goes ahead and he says, and he has his argument about circumcision. He says, you know, it can't be that God, what a horrible thing. God would go ahead and make circumcision? There's no way it's true because that's just cruel. Therefore, either God didn't say it or there's no God. My response is, why? Just say God is cruel. What's the problem? We make assumptions and we build cases off things, which, where are you coming from? Just because that's the case. And they're going, we justify them when we feel better about them, now we no longer have to do it. So this kid goes and says, there can't be a God, the Holocaust. And if there is a God, and I'm going to go to hell for not following him, it's worth it to go to hell and not follow what he's going to tell me to do, that God. And I was thinking in my head, and I even verbalized it, are you an idiot? If the mafia came to you and they said they wanted you to do something, and if not, you're going to be swimming with the fishies with 2 broken legs. You understand what I'm saying? 2 broken legs. But we're going to give you oxygen that will ever so slightly cut off to make you feel like you're suffocating, but then put it back on. But then shut it and turn it back on. You hear me? Bada bing, bada bing. Johnny, go do what you got to do. Got to do. You know what I'm saying? Forget about it. Who in the right mind would say, it's worth it for me to be in that situation and not listen to you? You an idiot. 10 seconds of it, you'll be begging for him to take you out of there. Does everybody get that? Cost. Do you know what the cost is? But I thought in Judaism there's no hell. I'm sorry to have to be the one. Maybe you picked the wrong day to come. But there's certainly something called hell. What that means is, it's a tremendous amount of pain that one goes through. What's the pain? I've heard many different ways of explaining this. This is what we call a Gemara. A Talmud has in here the oral Torah. I heard once that hell is a podium with a Gemara, and you're stuck to learn it. If you learned it during your life and you understood it, it's heaven. If you didn't enjoy it, it's hell. Okay, many different examples of what hell is, yeah? But they did nonetheless is in the many different descriptions of the pain. But it's pretty intense. And we've discussed in the past, I don't know if anyone was here about this, well, why we got to do that, how terrible that is, what's going on. The answer is this is just a reality. And I like the way it's put, it's a consequence. It is what it is. What do you want to do about it? When a person goes ahead, what is hell? I think more appropriately, people like to call it purgatory, right? In other words, it's a cleansing process. It's if somebody does something, they have to be healed. It's a healing process. And healing can be very painful sometimes. Anyone here? Yeah.
Isn't it the same thing as life in general?
That's right.
Sometimes it feels like life is a living hell. When
That's
you
right.
struggle with like mental illness and depression and bipolar disorder and all these things. And then you have to heal yourself, and that's purgatory in some. So then once you heal here in lifetime and you're happy, and let's say you follow Torah or you follow Shabbat and kosher and all these things, and you still battle this, when are you fully healed in heaven? When you die? Because you kept the Torah, or because you have to work on your own spiritual self?
Yeah, well, you're just doing a big word there, spiritual. Mm-hmm. The examples you gave until you said spiritual were physical. And that's the idea of what, yeah, we have to overcome certain physical things. But we also have to be able to be careful about our spiritual things and make sure that they're healthy as well. We have to be physically fit, and we have to be spiritually fit. We have to go ahead and we have to work on ourselves and grow in terms of our physicality. We have to be careful in terms of what we eat, how we behave, the way that we think, our thought processes. If it requires certain medication, if it's certain chemical imbalances, then we have to be on top of that. And the same thing is true in terms of our physical. Same thing is true for our spiritual. Person goes ahead, and to bring it clear like you brought it out, a person has a physical ailment. Has anybody here ever had a broken bone? Anyone? Did anyone ever have a broken bone that's set improperly? And you have to have it broken again? Yeah, you had that? What was it like? Was it pleasurable? Okay, thank you, you answered that, because it would have been very awkward. Okay, the answer is, well, not pleasurable. I took my daughter, she is now 3. When she was younger than that, she broke her hand. She broke her hand, and it was actually, I don't know if it's cute, but I went to the hospital and I saw a friend of mine who, he knows me, he's 2 years older than me, he knows me, we know each other our entire lives. And we were both bringing our daughters, who had just both broken their arms, to the same hospital, to the same doctor. It was like, hey, and when he came, we're like, how you doing? How you doing? Oh, you go first. And we were there, and the doctor's like, who's next? And really, he was next. And he goes, oh, you can go. He's like, I'm like, no, you were here. It's your appointment. He's like, yeah, but you got here before me. The doctor's like, I don't care who. Someone get in here, right? And I'm like, goes in, and it broke. But his daughter, unfortunately, broke her arm in a way that they had to reset it. She's 7 or 8 years old. And the doctor had to break her arm again, literally break her arm, snap a bone in order to have it reset. Very painful, traumatic experience. But the reality is, if it's in that case, it needs to be fixed. If it needs to be fixed, you have to set it. Is that painful? Yes. A person's soul is like that. We have different punishments in Judaism. They're called punishments, but again, I like it a lot better, called consequences, effects of the way that we behave. We have something called flogging, right? In the Hebrew, it's called malchus. We have the 4 death penalties: hereg, sreifa, chenek, and skila. Right? We have decapitation, strangulation, stoning, and pouring molten lead down your throat. These are little things which I read to my kids before they go to bed. And the idea is, and if you don't go to bed, bring in the hot molten lead. Anyway, the idea is understand that these are things that when a person hears about this in Judaism, they think about, what? That's horrible. What kind of religion is this? You sadistic, sick, can't believe it. Why is it any different than if you go to a doctor, you go into an emergency room, and you see what they're doing when a person goes through a traumatic experience? It's not different. It's the same thing. And the level that a person does requires a certain atonement, requires a certain fixing. So therefore, to answer, do we believe in hell? The answer is, what are you talking about? Look at life. Just like in life, there's a reality of a physical reality. There's also a spiritual reality. And therefore understand that if we don't do it, what's going to be? Oh, who cares? Because if that's the type of God, then... Are you kidding me? I love when people say, like, God was mean to me, therefore I'm not going to follow his Torah even more. Wow, you showed him. You really got him. I think you should also cut off your arm. That will really get him, because that's essentially what we're doing. Did everybody hear this? Now, this maybe is what we call bastante intense, maybe a little bit too intense for some of us to hear, so I'll say it differently. Judaism is lovely, everything is so nice, and go on with your life and not know truth. But let's talk about truth for a second. Understand there's a reality going on here, and I know it scares people and it frightens people, but sometimes you gotta get scared and frightened, and don't like me, hate me, have a vengeance against me. At least one time in your life, hear truth. And understand that there's something deep going on here. Why? This is serious. We're not playing games here. Person goes ahead, they get a job in a big corporation, and they go and they sorry, you messed up, you're fired. Why? I don't understand. Give me another chance. Understand, this is the big leagues. This is the real deal. We don't mess around here. Understand that the most obvious to be if you're working in as a doctor, you're working helping somebody, a patient, and you accidentally kill them. Sorry? It doesn't work like that. There's repercussions. Therefore, people understand, this is what we call, again, getting back into Pascal. Pascal's idea is that even if Christianity is wrong, it's still worth it to keep it. Even if there is no God, it's still worth it to keep it. I agree with him. The only problem is I think he got the wrong religion. Now the question is, so how do you know Judaism? How do you know Judaism is the right one? How does one know? What is the checklist, as was asked yesterday, to actually find out if the glove fits? How do we know that it's true? So, I mean, this is a classic argument already, and it's a classic discussion, but I'm going to share it with you at least for a couple of minutes, and we'll see how it goes. Probably end up being a couple more than just a couple of minutes, so let's understand the following. Before we get into it, I need to just give a little introduction to what we call knowledge. There's 4 different categories of being involved with something. One of them is called society. Another would be called faith. Another is called belief. Another is called knowledge. Now, you may disagree with my definitions of these things, and that's fine. Change the definitions. That's what we call semantics. We have to be working with a model here that we're on the same page. Does everybody get that? Are we good? Okay. You know, one of those general questions when you say, does everybody get that? But no one's really listening to respond, right? Okay, good. So we're all good. Let's take a look. Number 1 is society. What's society? Society means you didn't really make any decision. You just did whatever society did. Get it? Yeah, you live in New York, you like the Knicks. That person goes there and they grew up in a home of Christianity and they're Christian. Right? A person goes up in a Jewish home, they're Jewish. Someone goes up in Iran and they are a fan of the Iranian missile team. Right? Okay, now you have different, whatever you are. Okay. That's called society. No real decision, real anything. Okay, what's faith? You gotta have faith. What's faith? Anyone? What's faith? Belief in something, what's that?
Belief system.
A belief system? Good, which doesn't have logic or evidence. No evidence. So we go ahead and we find this concept. Now people want to go, now how do we know that we're right? How does a person know? How do we work it out? So let's take a look at step by step. Step by step works like this. You basically have to ask yourself a very simple question. Anytime there's a religion that comes, that exists, there's a very famous, what I'm about to share with you right now is what's called national revelation. Some of you maybe have heard it before. If you have, fantastic, it's review. If you haven't, you'll hear it now. And if you want to look it up yourself, just go on Google and type, did God speak at Sinai? The very first piece that comes up, don't look at it, it's an inappropriate video. But the second thing that comes, no, I'm just kidding, it's the third one. But the very first thing that comes up is an article from H.com. This is H.Torah that spells out everything I'm about to show you. I'm not going to tell you the whole thing about it, but I'm going to tell you at least what the main part of it. I mean, there's a lot to it. But again, so we have the society, faith, belief, and knowledge. Societies that just go with it. What's faith? Faith is I want it to be true, therefore. I have faith in someone. Why? When do you have, I have faith in you? It's because I really sure hope as heck that this guy knows what he's doing. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have any evidence, but I will. What's belief? Belief is an educated guess. Good. Belief is where you have some evidence, but it's not conclusive. I have evidence that's pointing in a certain direction, but it's not conclusive, right? And therefore, I take along with all these different things, I go with it. What's knowledge?
Something you know is true.
Knowledge is something you know is true, good. But it's what we call somewhat of conclusive evidence, at least beyond a reasonable doubt. In other words, could it be it's not 100%? The answer is yes. Knowledge doesn't have to be 100%. As a matter of fact, the majority of our lives, if not all of it, is based off non-100%. The things that you say you know, you don't really know. You just have a certain amount of evidence that points in a direction that it is so.
How did you define belief again?
Belief is when we have evidence, but it's not conclusive. There's some evidence, right? There's something, right? Most of the things that we know, we don't have 100%. I would say even all of them, but I don't want to get stuck into a fight over there, majority of them. We don't know our parents are our parents unless you took a DNA test, and even then, how do you know you're trusting the organization that took the DNA? Maybe they're lying to you. Do we understand that? No, they have a certain amount of trust. Okay, so that's called knowledge based on evidence. Did we get it? No matter what, we trust so much in our society. We trust so much. You buy at the store, you buy a little wafer at the store, you are trusting. You know how many companies you're trusting? I should probably look into this to find out one day. How many companies are you trusting when you buy a wafer, a chocolate-coated wafer? You're trusting the company that made the wrapper, that it doesn't have any sort of contaminants in it. You're trusting the people that sent the ink to the company to make the wrapper. You're trusting the people who give the flour. You're trusting the people who give the nuts. You're trusting the people who give, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on. Everything we do in our life, we are trusting tens of people. Do we know that's true? No. And a lot of times it's wrong. And a lot of times it's poison. And a lot of times people die and there's recalls. Why? Because... Say again, okay, right? And a lot of end up in these things. But then we find we trust. We don't know, but we call it knowledge. Is that right? Knowledge is when we have a certain amount of evidence showing a certain direction. Is that good? So far, so good? Okay. Now we take a look and says, what's one of the biggest forms of evidence that we have in this world? What's one of the biggest forms of evidence that's used? If you want to take a look what I mean, when is evidence usually used? In a courtroom. What's one of the biggest forms of evidence would be eyewitnesses. It is taken so seriously, eyewitnesses, in the American court system that sometimes you can indict and convict a person of one eyewitness's vague account. You guys know what I'm talking about? How many people were sent to prison falsely, incorrectly? They were accused, even though they were innocent, because of the fact that there was one witness that said a vague statement in passing while they were drunk. It's like a crazy thing. And they have so much things that are going on now, people that are getting at now because of DNA, that they go and they found afterwards that really the guy had nothing to do with it. He wasn't even there. Crazy things. Eyewitness. That's one eyewitness. What if there were 10 eyewitnesses? What if there were 30? What if there were 100? What if there were 1,000? What if there were 10,000? That would up the ante a little bit, right? That would make it from beyond a reasonable doubt to probably we would call beyond a shadow of a doubt. That this has got to be true. There are just so many witnesses. Now let's take a look in every religion and take a look at the base of the religion. Take a look at the core of the religion. Let's play a game. It's called the believability game. I'm your host, Friedman. Let's begin. Okay. Scenario number one. I would like to tell you what happened to me last night. Last night, I was at home. I was eating dinner. I was late at night. I shouldn't have eaten it. In the morning, I felt horrible, but I made a wrong cost-benefit analysis. Now, I go ahead, and as I'm eating the dinner, my house started to shake. The roof opened up. Let me just do this quickly. Please stay with me now. I know it sounds a little crazy, but listen, what could tell you it happened? The roof opened up. A star fell from the sky into my kitchen. A little man came out and told me that he is the God of the Star of David, and that I should join his religion. You probably think I'm nuts. I'll prove it to you. He branded me the God of the Star of David.
Did you prepare that?
No. The God of the Star of David did. What could I tell you?
That's amazing.
I know. And he told me I was going to meet all of you today. I should tell you this, and you should all give me $100. Pay up. Now, did this happen? Yes or no? Or maybe there's another answer. Did it happen?
No.
How do you know?
You can't know for sure.
Highly unlikely.
What's that?
Highly unlikely.
That's different than no.
In your opinion, it happened.
In my opinion, you mean my
I mean,
facts.
are you,
Did this happen?
it happened to you,
Do you
not
have
to us.
witnesses that it happened?
I was there.
Anybody else?
I was there, I told you.
That little guy that came out.
The little man. Yeah, he left now, but he was there.
The chances of it happening are so small I can conclude that it probably didn't happen.
Good, but you changed from no, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
The answer is probably not.
Probably not.
Probably not, but maybe. You weren't there. It's unlikely. Sounds absurd, but you weren't there. You can't tell me no. Okay, people, it wasn't just me. It was me. My wife and kids were there also. Did it happen? Maybe. Still maybe. We've raised the stakes a little because we have more people. We can go check it or whatever it is. And even then, let's say you check and they say it too. But still probably not. What if I told you it wasn't just me and my family? You were there also. Yeah, you.
Okay.
Do you remember last night? You were at my house when this happened. Okay, great. Let's get this religion off the ground. Let's start. Yeah? Did it? Were you there last night?
Yes.
Okay, that's going to work well. Did it work? Were you there last night?
I was not there.
You were not there? Yes, you were. Were you there? No. No. Were you there? Were you there last night?
Sure was.
Gosh, you guys, I got a bridge to sell you afterwards. Yeah. Now, people, does everybody get that I can go ahead and I could tell you about something that happened to me, and maybe it happened, maybe it didn't happen, probably not. You're not going to change your life off it. But as soon as I start saying that something happened to you, does that change the game a little bit?
Yeah, it makes it worse for you.
You were there last night. Yes or no?
No.
Why didn't you say unlikely, but yes?
I have no memory in memory.
Good. So in other words, you now know I am a liar.
Yeah.
Case number one is it happened to me. Case number two, it happened to me and a few group of people. Case number three, it happened to you. You know that's a lie. Yeah, we have a little interesting storyline that we have in Judaism, which unfortunately we're not going to be able to get through the entirety of it, but I will attempt to do it. That what happened, the entire Jewish people, not just one, not just two, but 3 some odd million people experienced God speaking with them, saying, I am the Lord your God, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, that brought you out of Egypt. Don't have any other gods upon me. Moses, Moses, come up to the mountain. Now, if you wanted to say it was some vague thing, that they said, wow, they saw something, and they're like, oh, they thought that it was something together, that's one thing. But would you ever have people hallucinating and they're like, wow, did you all hallucinate that? Right? It doesn't really work as well. You understand? It's not exactly Moshe, that doesn't really exactly work. Does everybody get at that point that now it starts to become ridiculous? If you tell the group of people themselves and they weren't there, then all of a sudden there's a bit of a problem. Yet interesting that our storyline goes that Moses comes along afterwards and he's telling the whole Jewish people what they experienced, and he starts to describe it, and all of them are like, yeah, that happened. If it didn't happen, what would they have done? They would have shot out of the water immediately, but they didn't shoot out of the water immediately. Why not? Because it actually happened. But now you go and you say, but maybe somebody made it up. Maybe really this never happened, and just thousands of years ago, a guy proclaims that this happened, and now it's coming again to the future, and now it's happening. And there you go, I give you the book called the Torah, and here you go, take a look at this Torah, and you're reading it, like, what is it? You're like, just take a look, it's from your ancestors. From my ancestors, you go and you read it, you get to the part where it says, and God came to the entire Jewish people, and he spoke to them. He said, I am the Lord your God, I came before you, and you don't have any other gods above me. Moshe come up on the mountain, and you're like, wait a minute, you mean to tell me the most phenomenal event that ever occurred in history, and my father never told me about this? Something's a little bit up here. Does everybody get that this is something which immediately would be lost and wouldn't be able to continue throughout the generations? It'll be lost immediately. There's no way that it can happen. Right? So a person goes in and we say, like, okay, maybe the bottom line is that, well, maybe they, it just progressed over time. I want you to come up with the theme, and I want you to actually try to figure this out. I'm not asking a question of could it have happened, could it have been made up. That, okay, anything can be. Is it probable? Is it logical? Does it make more than less sense that it was made up, or make more than less sense that it wasn't made up? Not only that, let's go a little bit further. Understand, you can't convince, if Moshe would have come down and said, hey, people, it was me, I experienced it, and now let me tell you, then could have said, oh, Moshe, wow, we're in. But he says, you guys experienced it. Oh, Moshe, you messed it up. Yeah, now you told us, that's a lie. We know it's a lie. We weren't there. We didn't experience it. But apparently they actually did experience it. Because he goes ahead and he tells them a little bit more than just that. And you have to go ahead and now pass this on to your children and your children's children. To understand the day before you stood before Sinai, us, all of us here that we experienced, he didn't go and say, hey guys, remember when he said, Zachor, Tiskor, make sure that you remember this event that's occurring. Make sure you pass this on and teach children well. They will and there's what happens. They go out and teach on to your children and keep this idea continuing throughout the generations. And interesting, which is one of the major holidays which is kept by most Jews today, even if you're secular, called Passover, which is the day where we go and we pass on the generations, where we pass it on. Why is Passover the one that's kept? If anything, let's keep something else. Keep Purim. You know what I mean? Get hammered, right? And they do that anyway the rest of the year, so why not do it also on Purim? And it says, well, the concept is why we go and do this, because it's the most important holiday in order to pass on the Jewish continuity and Jewish tradition. So then you'll say, well, maybe Moshe, there was some sort of, one-time thing, he was able to pull it off. If he's able to pull it off, how come no one else did it? We know everything that's ever been done has been duplicated. If it can be done, it's going to be duplicated. When Apple came out with the touch screen, the next day, 43,278 touch screens were made. I made that up, but a lot of them were made up. A lot of them were made. Why? Because as soon as it's there, it's implemented and it's done. How come no one else done it? Isn't that interesting? What's more believable? That God appeared to one person, and now you're going to decide if you're going to go with that person now, or God appeared to 300,000, 600, 3 million people. What's more what's stronger? Which is a stronger base? 3 million. How come nobody out of any religion of the 4,200 religions, according to Yahoo's best answers that we know today, none of them have ever claimed that God spoke to an entire nation? Because no one can claim it, because it didn't happen to them. And if you could claim it, you would claim it. Obviously, if there's 44,000 some odd religions, some of them must have known they've been making it up. How come they didn't take the strongest claim of millions of people? Because you can't make it up unless it actually happened. And here's the kicker in chapter 4, in chapter 4 or 5, check it out yourselves, verses 32 to 33, found in Deuteronomy. Not only is it that we're the only religion that ever claims such a thing, but it's predicted in the Torah that no religion ever has or ever will predict. Not predict, because that's not a word, but predict. National revelation. Isn't that interesting? Now, who would be the last person to give that prediction? Maybe the guy who was able to pull off such a stunt. Because if this guy could pull off a stunt, then he knows it can be pulled off. If he knows it could be pulled off, obviously he's not going to put into it, no one will ever pull this off, because he did it, why can't someone else come along and do it? In which case he would just be shooting himself in the foot to say no one else will do it. Let him say, not say anything at all, or say maybe others will, and then we'll have to discuss it. But the idea is that he actually puts it in there, it means something's going on. Maybe this wasn't coming from a man or a group of people, but maybe this was coming from a God. Maybe this isn't something that was just made up, and maybe it actually happened, and perhaps that's the reason why we have the storyline. So if you want to take a look and see, do the checks fit? Does it fit the bill of being true? Well, just take a look and see. What's the origin of every religion? Every one of them is one person or a small group of people coming and saying something. What does Judaism state? 3 million people going and accepting this, and it's predicted it's never going to happen again. And no one actually ever attempted to do it again. Something spoken to the people themselves, not previous or future, but you yourselves experienced it. If it was a lie, it would have been blown out of the water right away. So my friends, this is what I would call in the categories when we're dealing with society. We're dealing with faith, dealing with belief, dealing with knowledge. I would call this some pretty overwhelming, significant evidence that indeed we would take a court of law, would accept immediately, let alone anybody else, and go and say that, hey, this is probably true. Throw that in with the cost-benefit analysis of things. Actually, even if it wasn't true, it's still worth it together. We got ourselves a beautiful picture of maybe something we should be following. Now, I ended off here in a way which wasn't such a good tone when I said following. I should have said following. Because I said following, it sounds like I'm going to add more, but really I'm done, so following. Okay, everyone, it's been a pleasure. I'll see you when I see you. If I don't, then I won't say kind of a great day.